Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you're listening and not watching the video, head to our website for a list of resources discussed in this podcast, local restaurants, and even social commentary. useventphotos.com podcast. Thanks so much. Enjoy the show. How you doing? I'm Mike Gaddy, and welcome to the 743 Patterson Park podcast. Last week, I sat down with Chef Andrew and his partner Lina to talk about their opening of Revisions Books and Bar, a new restaurant just off of Patterson Park in Butchers Hill. The episode last week focused solely on opening their restaurant, what it's like to open a local cafe during a pandemic. This week, our conversation continues, but it's a broader focus, talking about the food scene in Baltimore and local places to eat. It's an insider's guide to the best of Baltimore, places where Chef Andrew has collaborated, places where he goes to eat, and some of the best restaurateurs and local spots. But it's even more than that. We talk about how social media has influenced the food scene, how COVID-19 has forever changed how things are being done in the restaurant industry, even how people are being paid, how collaboration has become important to the independent restaurateur in our city. So please join me for this insider's guide to the food scene of Baltimore with Chef Andrew and his partner Lina. Take a listen. Other cities have recently really developed a reputation as being foodie cities, and some rather surprising cities. Like I was in Louisville, Kentucky a couple of years ago doing an event and could not believe the foodie culture that was there. How do you think Baltimore your cat's tails? It's so cute. I love cats. How do you think Baltimore is in sort of embracing that foodie culture?
I think we rank up there with a lot of those cities. I think that because we're in the shadow of Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia, it's hard to keep that in focus. And then also because we live here and because we are, we see these restaurants and eat at these restaurants so often, it's hard to keep that into perspective as far as just how good they are. We talked about how Cafe Dear Leon has popped up during this pandemic and the attention that they've got. The pastries and stuff that I've had from Cafe de Leon ranks up as some of the best I've ever had anywhere. It's amazing, and we've had Nihao in Canton, just got rated as number 4 from Esquire magazine as one of the best new restaurants in the country. Ekiben over in Fells Point and Hampton gets plenty of national attention. I think it would take moving out from the city for a little while and coming back to really change the perspective and put it on the same level as those other cities. But, we've gotten plenty of attention recently for that. We've had Woodbury earn James Beard Award. Cindy Wolf has been nominated every year I can remember for James Beard Award. I think we have, great, unique personalities in the chefs in this city. And I think that we have a really good crop of food bloggers and Instagram influencers, which I don't think a lot of cities say about their social media people, but they're just champions of the food in this city. And I think if people on here don't follow Food Nomad on Instagram and Facebook, the city of Baltimore having somebody like that who I think is essential and just amazing, I think speaks to our food culture as well.
So a lot of artists I talk to are get into their art, whether it's Kate Kutzwitz, who does the Black Lives Mural windows, or I just did Wes Anderson, who's a local musician. They get into their respective art because they want to see their art out in the community, whether it's walking to work and seeing the windows, or whether it's sitting next to a guy on an airplane and realizing that he's blasting the music that you've produced. What is it like to come home from a long day at the restaurant, fall into bed and flip through Instagram and see your food.
You know, well, I don't know how it is for other artistic people, and I don't know how it is for other chefs, but definitely the chefs that I talk to and have good relationships with, we seem to be more neurotic and insecure than most, and definitely our own harshest critics. So it's always, it's a strange feeling to see the type of food and the different dishes that people really grasp onto and love. And for me, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, it's always the dishes that I conceptualize the most and slave over the most and feel like are home runs and that I'm the most proud of, that will go out there and will completely flop and won't sell it all. And I won't see anybody post any pictures of except for myself. And then the dishes that are kind of throwaway dishes to me that I put on the menu to fill it out, and that I guess just subconsciously I know are crowd pleasing, are the ones that I see the most, reposted, and I end up not being able to take off the menu. And it's a weird relationship, and it's a weird, I guess anytime anybody does anything artistic and it's put out there, and you have your own opinions about it, and it's received a different way.
When you're tired, do you dread looking at Instagram, or do you look, do you think, okay, I'm going to put it, is it doom scrolling or is it invigorating?
Depends.
Yeah, it definitely depends. I almost, as much as I do it, I almost never find scrolling through social media invigorating. There'll be pops here and there of things that I'll see where, it'll kind of rejuvenate me, but.
Do you search for yourself?
I do.
No. I mean, at different places that I've been, especially when I was at, the Brewers Art, which, was there for almost 20 years before I got there. It had such a long history and such a loyal fan base. I found myself searching for the Brewers Art and the food there more than any other place, just because it was kind of an echo chamber. I knew that for the most part, everything was well received. And, if somebody was going to blast something that I did, then I definitely took that to heart. There was so much other noise around other, projects that I've done that I didn't do it as much. So
that you realized that you wanted to move into the space, which will be Revisions, the Old Life of Riley space. You saw it on Facebook, Patterson Park Neighborhood Facebook page, which I just love, and you realized you needed a partnership to get it off the ground. Who did you partner with, and just give me a little bit of background on that, because I find that interesting, and again, sort of these partnerships that grow out of.
Sure. When we first came up with the idea for this, hybrid, bookstore, restaurant, and bar, I reached out to a lot of former restaurant owners and people that I worked with in the past, and whose opinions I really respect. And, I got a decent, feedback from them, but they told me to reach out to Alon Kotz, who I had not met previously, but I was very familiar with. He was one of the founding owners of the food market in Hamden. And then after leaving there, opened Orto in Station North, two very well received restaurants in Baltimore, and, seemed to have a pretty good knowledge of what it took to succeed in Baltimore. And so I brought the idea to him, and, his overwhelming positivity to the idea and his response to it, and just immediately bringing up this space that we had already looked at, just kind of kismet in a way. And, he has been such a huge help, just being an advisor to us, and I mean, buying the building and renting it to us because he has that much faith in us. And then also all his, advisory roles since then has, we would not be here without him, definitely.
So is collaboration important in the restaurant industry more and more? It seems like it is more important in art in general to collaborate with other people to get business ventures to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be the Foreman Wolves and the Atlas restaurant groups and those big groups. And I think if you're going to be an independent restaurant owner or an independent business owner, you need to do things that help put you in a position, and making those connections and finding those partnerships. I think is huge. And I think over the past, you know, I think that's probably been the biggest shift in the restaurant scene in Baltimore recently, is that instead of all these restaurants thinking that they can only survive and progress if they're the only ones and everybody else needs to suffer for that, you see everybody else working together because they know that everybody else succeeding is only going to help them, and it's going to build the culture. It's going to build the identity in the city. And all these great restaurants, all these great chefs in the city, they're part of this kind of community, and help each other out when they can, which is great. And I think you're seeing a lot of personalities and independent restaurant owners and chefs realizing that kind of this business model that the restaurant industry has been built on needs to come down, and it needs to be torn down to its bare bones and kind of built back up to something that's less exploitive and just less problematic in every way. And the only way that it's going to do that is if a lot of people buy in. And so you're seeing that a lot with these new places that are opening. And I think hopefully now, with the pandemic and with everybody already having to shift that model and kind of rethink it, now's the best time of any to do that. And that's what we're going to be doing at Revisions.
So you're the third artist, and I'm putting you, I put you squarely in the artist entrepreneur category, but you're the third artist to basically express to me that you see COVID as an opportunity to rethink the industry and to move forward. That is really interesting.
It's when things are working and people are making money, then there's no reason for people to look inside at how they're doing that and the backs on which they are, succeeding. But when you're not, and all of a sudden you have to figure out now again, how does a restaurant make money? How does another business make money? It's not a secret to anybody in the restaurant industry, all the problems that were in there. Anybody that's worked in the restaurant industry knows what a toxic, problematic environment, I would say an overwhelming majority of them are. So now when you have to rethink restaurants and the businesses as a whole, I feel like if you have any bit of morality or a soul, then you can take that completely out of the equation, because why wouldn't you? If you're going to rebuild the model and you're going to rethink how a restaurant should work, why wouldn't you take that part out that is only there because everybody that opens a restaurant just says, well, it's always been that way. Yeah. That's how it worked before. That's how restaurants make money. You pay people less than, minimum wage and hope that the generosity of the people at the table make up for that. You pay the cooks in the kitchen that probably have 2 different jobs and are working 12 to 14 hours, as little as they're willing to accept. So you have a higher profit margin at the end of the day, which they're already very low in this industry.
Right. How does the public fuel your creativity, and does this new footprint have a walling off effect that hurts?
I don't know. I'll definitely say I can agree with that sentiment. Even though I am an introvert, when I am at the library and I'm at the public service desk and I'm interacting with patrons, that's the only social interaction that gives me energy. Everything else drains it. And so it has been challenging shifting to, the library isn't open to the public right now. So, I can talk to people on the phone, I can email them, we set up Zoom calls, but it's not quite the same. You don't have those unexpected interactions where you go into a day and you don't know what conversation you're going to have. And yeah, that energy used to kind of fuel me to do some of the more like boring stuff, and now it's not there anymore. So that's definitely a challenge, and we're gonna have to think about in this environment how to keep those channels open for that kind of connection. I'm hoping with like sidewalk sales at the bookstore, that we will be out on the sidewalk. We can say hey to anybody who passes by, meet our neighbors that way, kind of build that community slowly, maybe not in the way that I would ideally like to, but in a way that's at least safe for everybody.
Yeah, kind of echoing that also as an introvert who has very low social bandwidth, which, obviously I picked a great career for that. But, when opening Maggie's Farm, and I think a lot of people that get into the business for the first time, you think that you're just going to open a business. You think you're just going to open a restaurant. But especially in Baltimore, I feel, and I learned in the Lauraville Hamilton neighborhood, that's not the way it works. You open a business, but then you're immediately part of the community, whether you want to or not. And then you start to have relationships with all the other business owners, and then all the people that live in that community. And that in and of itself, helps to energize you and helps. It's it's a weird thing. So going into this, having done it before, I know what that is, and I know that living in Patterson Park, especially in a pandemic, but even if I was allowed to go outside, I probably still wouldn't, and I wouldn't interact much with my neighbors just because that's not who I am. But immediately when I'm in that building and I'm now the business owner, I know that I am now part of the greater Butchers Hill and Patterson Park community, and it's a completely different feeling, and it's going to be interesting to see how we're going to exist and be hopefully a positive influence and part of that community while having these restrictions. So
when do you all think you'll have the doors open?
So originally the idea was March. Now we're shooting for mid to late March. So yeah, we'll see.
All right. Well, we wish you the best of luck. So Chef Andrew said it's hard to keep perspective of just how good the restaurants here in Baltimore are, how creative the restaurateurs are, and how they bring a unique spin to the food culture right here. He said maybe you had to move away and come back to remember just how good Baltimore is. My partner and I moved to Florida a few years ago, and we lived there for maybe 5 or 6 years on both coasts in 2 different houses. About a year and a half ago, we moved back to Patterson Park, and I was bribed by Matthew to agree to move back here because he said I could have a row house with a rooftop deck, which we now do. It was a college dream, and it happened. Who knew? However, for Valentine's Day, I thought I'd do something special for him. I wanted something other than flowers. We're not really flower boys. So I ordered from a local bakery the most delicious box of cookies that you can imagine. We inhaled every single cookie and even practically licked the crumbs right out of the box. My mom, who watches this podcast, is probably not going to be thrilled with me when I say they were some of the best cookies I have ever had. Right from local Baltimore bakery. Bakeries don't exist like that in other cities. I know. I looked for them. They are unique to here. Next week, we're going to shift things just a little bit. I want to talk about some of the local news going on right in our community that you may have missed. So please join me next week when we take a look at some of the happenings right around our beautiful neighborhood. Meanwhile, have a great couple weeks, and we'll see you soon.